Driver, start your engine! In the beginning, stock cars outran the police to deliver the hooch to our ancestors. So sweet. Are you ready for a trip down victory lane, where Richard Petty's winnings were insane and Dale Earnhardt put everyone to shame? Canadian Junior Handley is in the Hall of Fame. From the home of Canada's crown jewel, Ucasa Motor Speedway, live from Haldimand County, it's time for the Driver in Deep podcast. Are you ready?
Welcome everyone to the Driver in Deep podcast, brought to you by wingnutsports.com. So Alex, in this episode we have Chris Wright from Concord, North Carolina, but he's made his mark as a team member and now on the management side of things, specifically in the upper levels of NASCAR, so I'm really looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you earlier in different conversations, I worked with Chris for a few years at NASCAR, which is where we actually met. Even though throughout the years, we talked about it since, that we have both been at different events across North America, races, and at the same place, in this small pit area, and never ever met. Funny how things work out.
Before we get to Chris, I thought we should give a shout out to your nephew, Carson Nagy. Not too long ago, our company, wingnutsports.com, signed Carson to a long-term sponsorship deal for Carson's iRacing. And from what I understand, Carson's doing a great job. I keep seeing texts that he's in the finals of races and he's winning some. So far, so good on the iRacing.
Yeah, he's doing well. He's come a long way. I know he struggled for a while. The iRacing thing's not as easy as people think. There's some people on there that are really incredible. And and he's also got hooked up with Team Reaper Speed Lab that helps people out with setups on their iRacing cars, depending on the event or the race that you go to. So he's pretty excited about racing with those folks too. That's
good. I'm sure he's getting some good benefits out of that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. One thing though, I do have to say, last week Carson was a guest on the True North Racing podcast, and I listened to it. I thought Carson did a great job, spoke very well. He's still a young kid, but he did a great job, except for one thing. He didn't give a shout out whatsoever to Wingnut Sports. So what's up with that, Alex?
I'm pretty sure that he's like so many different people in sport. He's holding out to restructure his deal, I'm pretty sure.
Well, hey, maybe we should find that out, because I also heard that he was a little off his game because his mom, Sheila, I think she Zoom bombed his class at school. You know what? Let's see if we can get to the bottom of this. I'm going to give Sheila a quick call here.
Hello.
Hey, Sheila.
Hi.
Hi, it's Mark, and Alex is here with me.
Is this Sheila or she for real?
I'm for real.
You are for real. I watched you on Facebook today, and for any of our listeners, Sheila, Carson's mom, has a really cool little Facebook thing going on. Just search She for Real, and you'll see a few little videos that you like to do to try to cheer people up, and I think you're doing a great job.
Aw, thanks.
You're quite welcome. But listen, we have something important to talk about here.
All right.
Alex and I were talking about what a great job Carson's been doing with his iRacing lately. And as you know, he just signed a long-term sponsorship deal with Wingnut Sports, Alex and I. And he was a guest on the True North Racing podcast last week, and I listened to the podcast and thought Carson did a phenomenal job. Except for one thing. He never once mentioned his sponsor, Wingnut Sports. And we were trying to get to the bottom of the reason why. And the only thing we could come up with is that we thought he might have been off his game a little bit, because apparently you might have Zoom bombed his class at school. Is that true?
100%.
What
that was awful.
Tell us.
Awful. Sounded awful good. Tell us about it.
Tell us about it.
Well, there was a lot of vulgarity involved, so I don't know if this is PG or not.
No, it's not.
It's not PG. You're good.
We're good?
You never worried about it on the call, apparently.
No, I didn't. So, as you know, Carson's doing this iRacing. So he's very passionate about it. He's loving it because, well, he would love to do it live on the track, but he can't. So he's taken up to this iRacing, and he does it all night long. I don't understand why people don't have things to do the next day, but he is there for his races, and he loves it, so he stays up at night. And as long as he meets his obligations, it's okay. Well, he was supposed to be at school at 8:30 in the morning.
When you say at school, you mean online or
no.
physically at school?
Well, I think that it's like a back and forth. So one day he's in school, and the other day he's supposed to be online. So this is what's going down. So I wake up in the morning and I hear sounds from Carson's bedroom, and I'm thinking, holy crow, he missed school. I freaked out, and I ran into the room, and he's laying in bed with his laptop and his phone. I'm like, you little fucker, you get up and you get into that shower. You are supposed to be at school right now, and you know what the rules are, and I'm going off. And then I didn't tune into it at first, but then somebody's yelling, your mic's on. You haven't muted your mic. Carson. And they're screaming over top of me, yelling at this kid to get his act together. And he's now screaming, mom, 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 mom. And the teacher's screaming, Carson. And then it tuned in, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm yelling, get in the shower. And there was a lot of vulgarity. and then all of a sudden the teacher's like, your mic's not on mute. And Carson doesn't know where to look and finally goes to the teacher and is like, okay, I'm not on mute. And then has to mute it. But in the meantime, it tunes in that, oh my goodness, I was just using profanity in front of this kid's whole entire class as the teacher's trying to save him. So then I had to back slowly out of the room and let him go back to class.
Well, I can certainly understand why he might have been off his game a little bit after that.
Yeah. Just a wee bit.
Yeah. Do you now have something on his door, like a sock on the handle or something, so that in case he's online?
That's a good idea. Good idea. Because apparently there's two different, you're in school one day, off the other day, and I got confused. So this was the day he was supposed to be online.
Oh, kids got entertained, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. I bet you I have more followers on She For Real now.
Yeah. Well, after this episode of Driver in Deep, you'll probably have quite a few more.
Well, today I jumped into his car. That was always interesting. How do you guys get in and out of that car so fast? I was trying to get out of that race car, and there was no way.
Well, I've got video that shows that Mark has some problems as well.
Well, Vaseline, I think.
Maybe I'll post that on our Facebook page.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think it's a skill.
Well, listen, I can tell you one thing, Sheila. I watched your video, and I'm pretty sure you don't try to get out of the car by putting one foot out first. Before we
I was trying to get a technique going.
Yeah, just before we let you go here, I do want to answer your question that was, on your mind today on your video. Over the top.
Oh, thank you.
Over the top is how the toilet paper should come off the roll.
Okay, I'm going to write that down. I'm taking what people are thinking and come up with a consensus here.
Good job, though. I like how you have props in the car, around the car. That was an excellent episode. So keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
All
Bye.
Right. Take care. Bye for now.
Our guest today is the Arca Menards East-West Series Director, currently, but he also has a rich history in motorsports, from driving to crew member, crew chief, and now in the management side. Plus, I think Chris has covered as much of Canada as you and I have, Mark. So let's welcome Chris Wright to Driver in Deep. How you doing, Chris?
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Hey, great. Welcome, Chris. It's great to meet you. Chris, Alex and I, he's actually wanted to have you on since we first started the podcast, and your name came up last week when we interviewed DJ Kennington. So when I was researching, I was surprised that you worked with a few teams and drivers here in Canada. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Actually, DJ obviously was down driving for Randy McDonald. And obviously we all know that racing's a very small world. It's large and complex, but it's small when you get right down to the nut and bolts. So DJ was down driving for Randy McDonald. So that's how DJ and I met each other. And DJ actually drove for us in Xfinity hit and miss when I was at Renzi Motorsports. Actually, I believe DJ's best run was with us. I think we finished 9th at Montreal. But so that's how I met DJ, and honestly, that's how I ended up coming to Canada. The Dowler family, Noel and Kevin and Adam and Griffin. So I started working with the Dowler family, and their car was at that time was run out of Kennington shop there in Ontario.
You mean the Griffinator, don't you?
Yeah. I haven't seen those guys in some time. I've seen Adam, but whenever they were in Smyrna or Daytona a couple of years ago. Actually, it was Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah.
Because they have a place there in Phoenix.
Mark doesn't get that one, but you'd have to meet the Griffinator when he's in his prime to understand that. He has a character.
I'm sure he hasn't changed, but he's definitely Kevin's son. There's no doubt.
No kidding. Like many of us in the sport, it all started for you as well. With a family team back in, I think it was around 1980, where you and your dad both drove cars, dirt cars, of course. I believe that you had a pile of success. Your dad did. Tell us a bit about that journey.
Sure. It's so obviously very close to my family, and my father and I. Dad started racing mini stocks in 1980. Fortunate to win. I don't know the exact number, but it was over 200 races that Dad and I won, feature wins, I should say. And several track championships in different divisions. We traveled really just North Carolina, South Carolina primarily. It was pretty fortunate to race at some cool racetracks. Never really think they're going to be historic whenever you're racing there. But Dad and I both raced at Metrolina Fairgrounds, which has been covered pretty deep in the racing history of NASCAR as well as dirt racing itself. So again, it's being able to go to some of those places before they shut down has been pretty cool.
So Chris, you graduated from the University of South Carolina, I believe, with 3 degrees: administration, marketing, and management. And right after college, you started with Melling Racing, and Lake Speed was a driver. Did you start on the business side, or did you start as a crew member?
I actually started as a crew member. I to be honest with you, I got a ton of grief for going to school and really not utilizing my degrees, I should say. And
you are now, buddy.
Yeah, it's come full circle. But honestly, it was an opportunity to do something you enjoy and you love to do, and just so happen to make a living doing it. And obviously, it was a goal of mine from the beginning to either crew chief or drive, and driving days have far surpassed. But that was the goal and kind of task in my head at that time.
Yeah, and after that Melling job, you moved around a little bit, worked with a bunch of great people. We'll touch on some of that later, but I know we've talked about this before, but you moved. It was 1998. You went to work for Robert Yates Racing. That must have been super exciting for you, of course. While there, you're part of a bunch of wins, and in 1999, you guys won the Cup Championship with Dale Jarrett, and I believe Todd Parrott was the crew chief. In the grand scheme of things, in the crew side, was that your biggest opportunity?
Yeah, I never will forget. I went to work for Robert April 10th of 1998, and that was Robert's birthday is April 19th, and mine's April 20th, and we would always go back and forth. I'd tell him happy birthday one day, and he'd tell me the next. So it's kind of it was a big opportunity for me, not only for my career, but in 2002 I was going through some personal. In 2001, 2002, I was going through some challenges personally, and honestly, Robert probably could have chose to put me out in the pasture, but he chose to take me under his wing and I was very close to him, and still close to Doug today, and Carolyn and Amy. But and honestly, it's kind of ironic because our spec engine program is done through Robert Yates Racing. So that was tough. It was tough when Robert passed, but it was also very fortunate to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you talk about him a lot whenever we were chatting, and I was fortunate enough to meet Robert a couple times. What a great guy! And I never met Todd Parrott, but he always intrigued me, and I know you think a lot of Todd. Just tell us a little bit about Todd and how he operated, what you learned from that guy. And he's touched on so many crew people throughout the years, for sure.
So I want to go back to my first job in racing. Two guys gave me an opportunity. It was Michael Fatback McSwain, is what a lot of people know him as, and Peter Suspenzo. I say that because Fatback ended up coming to Robert Yates Racing, and so I got to go back to where my start was, and Todd and I call him Fatback. I always will know him that way, but they had a lot of the same mentality. I mean, second wasn't good enough, and that was that was good because that's kind of the way my mom and dad raised me. There's I don't want to really say participation awards in life, but you win when you win, and that's kind of how it is. So Todd was very he was very good to work for. At times he was tough to work for, but it was probably more of a he and Fatback both were probably more of a tough love because they didn't cut you much slack.
What about Buddy?
And I'm good with that.
What about Buddy? Did you ever get a chance to work with him at all?
Actually, my Buddy Parrott he and Robert were really good friends.
So I figured.
I had a few friends that worked for Buddy because Buddy was at Roush Racing for many number of years. My only experience with Buddy is often a group of us would ride up to Bristol on motorcycles, and he would always be in the pack of us to run up there. So I didn't really work under Buddy, but I was around Buddy.
Gotcha.
Now, Chris, you left Yates, I believe, because ultimately you wanted to be a crew chief. If I'm not mistaken, where did you go and who did you work for after you left Yates?
So it's a funny story. So I had an opportunity to go car chief in 2003 for Bruco Motorsports, which was in Kentucky. While up there, my granddad, which I was very close to, he started getting ill, so I just felt it was time to move back home. And during that time, Robert had always told me when I left Robert's the first time that he never had a problem with somebody bettering themselves, but if you were making a lateral move, he had a tough problem with that. And obviously I wasn't car chiefing at Roberts, but so point being is there was an open door whenever an opportunity came back. Well, during that time frame, obviously was the adulthood and paying bills kind of thing. I was fortunate to work for Ray Evernham during that downtime, or not downtime, but during that time that I wasn't at Roberts. Went back to Roberts at the end of 2003 and stayed with Robert until I got the opportunity to crew chief in 2005. My initial job crew chiefing was with Glenn Motorsports, a gentleman by the name of Scott Glenn out of Phoenix, crew chief for Regan Smith there. Unfortunately, between his business having financial problems and the sponsorships, Regan and I ended up going to Renzi Motorsports together in 2006. So really I spent a lot of my time at Robert Yates Racing and for Ed Renzi at Team Renzi Motorsports crew chiefing. Which is where, going back to DJ, that's who DJ drove. When DJ drove for us in Xfinity at the time in Montreal, it was with Renzi Motorsports.
Right. Gotcha. And you got a win with Purvis driving, didn't you?
We did. Whenever I went to Bruco, we actually won the first race out at Texas. And Jeff was a cool dude. I still see him from time to time, I don't think the guy ages a bit. He looked like $1 million whenever I worked with him, and he still looks like $1 million today.
Yeah, last time I saw him, I think I told you when we moved to Tennessee there for a while. Jeff, of course, is from there. He'd come over to our speedway all the time, and same then. Man, he looked like he'd run a marathon, lift a 500-pounder. You know, just
he used to tell us that he would do 400 sit-ups a day.
Oh, I believe it. Because he had muscles in his cheeks.
I've done that in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, was that a running total?
What's that?
Is that a running total? Like for life, 400?
Yeah, for me, yes.
Yeah, I plan to get there too. We'll see what happens. Still have time. Kind of brings us back to Canada. You touch base on how you met with DJ and ended up doing some work up here with some teams. And I'd mentioned in the opening how you traveled, you went to a bunch of different places in Canada. You've probably seen as much of the country as I have and Mark have. But I always, I don't know if we even talked about this when we worked together, but where did you like to go the most when you were here?
I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to come up to spend some time in Canada. You guys have the countryside in Canada is just so different than it is in what I'm accustomed to. There's just areas that there's still land that's not developed. And, as we all grew up in smaller cities, that's the way it kind of life started out. So it's kind of, but as far as where I enjoyed going, it was really neat to go out west to Vernon, BC, and that was as far as the area. Vernon, BC was pretty neat and run pretty good there. I don't know that I had a bad experience anywhere, honestly, but the sights and sounds in Vernon, BC was pretty remarkable, and spending time at Kevin and Noel's house.
Yeah,
in Alberta was pretty fun as well.
Yeah, out west was really nice for sure. Hey, I had a guy send a text when he heard that you were coming on, and he had a question. He wanted to know who is Canada's best spotter.
Who's the best spotter?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to say that it's probably not Jeff Gutler.
Let me see.
I don't know.
I gotta check my phone and see if that's who sent the question in. Oh, hang on a sec. Hey, Jeff, you on the phone?
I got you.
Hey, buddy. We're just talking to Chris Wright here on Driver and Deep.
And
I know that guy. Yeah, so I just posed him that question. I asked him, we're talking about his involvement in Canada, traveling and different places and who he worked with. And I asked him, who's Canada's best spotter? I refer to you as Canada's spotter, as you know. And
yeah, I still got to pay you for that.
Yeah, he said definitely not Jeff Gutler. So I thought we better get you on the call and get this shit straightened out.
Coming from him, I believe it.
Chris, now that Jeff's on the line, you sticking by your story?
Yeah, I'm sticking by it. No, it's I don't know who the best spotter would be, but just pretty dang good. Got to give a guy credit where credit's due.
Fair enough. So we know
he had some good teachers, and I'll just leave that one alone.
Yeah, fair enough. So Jeff, knowing that C-Dub just got back from Phoenix, where do you think he ate out there?
Definitely Lola's chicken and waffles.
Is that true, C-Dub?
Didn't make the trip this time. I had reservations for Jeff and I, but he never showed.
Ah.
So it just wasn't going to be the same.
Don't throw me under the bus.
Well, he's the one that came up with the idea, and I just went with it. So
yeah,
that would be a hard no.
I've never been there, obviously, but I will have to Google it when we're done.
Yeah, no, that's didn't make it out there. That was probably a one and done experience, I'm guessing, for all of us on the call here.
Oh, so we're done with that one. Period. I get it. All right. Well, listen, Jeff. Appreciate you joining us, buddy, on Driver and Deep, and we just wanted you to keep C-Dub honest here.
Well, someone's got to, but I know that Kathy's probably happy that you're babysitting them tonight.
Oh,
She's got
probably.
the night off.
Oh, I'm sure she is happy. Yeah.
Of course.
Howdy, feller. We'll see you all
See you, little feller.
And yeah, the little feller thing, we'll leave that alone too.
Oh, and he's gone now. He can't defend himself.
Well, yeah, that's a different story. That one. I'll bring Mark up to speed after the episode here.
All right. Well, we'll just try to bring things back a little bit here, Chris. I'm fairly new to the racing world myself, and one of the things I'm learning here is that the industry can be quite volatile at times. You know, there's a lot of job chasing, shops closing, loss of sponsorships. Plus, I mean, being on the road all the time, that must really be a grind at times.
It is. It's very, very challenging at times. It really is. I'm fortunate to have a good support group, and oftentimes that really, in my opinion, is what it boils down to. My wife and kids are extremely supportive, which is great. And that's probably the only way anyone that does this, either you're not married or you've got a good support system and you are married. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, I'm close with my family and my mother and father, and fortunate to still have them here on Earth. So that's probably the key thing for me, and really anyone. But I would say it is a grind. I mean, last year, whenever the pandemic started and throughout the course of last year, I was on tap to do, I think it was 22 events last year. And when the pandemic happened, I ended up doing 31. And last year was learning. It was a learning experience for everyone. And not to get sidetracked on the conversation at hand, but I think it's pertinent. The pandemic, you were essential personnel only, and we still are essential personnel only. And I truly, last year, I would start out in credentials because the liabilities that were hanging over your head beyond the racing aspect of it, from a health concern and trying to keep the garage healthy. I would start out in credentials, and in the West last year, I was actually the race director as well. So you were very short-staffed, but it was what you had to do to do the things that you enjoyed doing, but do the things that you're in business to do, and that was to race. But racing's had its challenges. I think every avenue of any entertainment, whether it's sports or whether it's, shucks, who would ever think the movie theaters would get shut down?
Yeah.
And they're living that today. So it's between the pandemic and that, thinking back to 2007, 2008, when the economy had its challenges, it was two waves of things that was a huge detriment to life and certainly life in racing and entertainment.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. You know, the pandemic's been a grind for sure for everybody. And, we touched earlier about your position now being the series director for the Arca Menards East West, and you help out with the Arca Menards series, I think, when you're available. But, we met in 2013. We both ended up going to NASCAR together, or not together, different times, but the same year. And that's where we first met. And I think that year, you were partway through the year and you gathered up your toolbox. I think you're at SR2 Motorsports and said, that's enough of that. And I'm going, you had an opportunity to work for NASCAR.
Yeah, exactly. It's Alex, as you know, when you drove yourself. It's I certainly wouldn't say that I would never. I still miss racing. Sure. And being involved in the competition and being involved in that aspect of the grind, if you will. But I was very fortunate. Actually, a mutual individual, Brad Moran, I think hired both of us.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Brad is now at the Truck Series, and it was one of those things where I knew it was time. I knew it was time for a change, and I was very fortunate throughout the team side of things. The one thing that I say that I'm fortunate about is the people that I met and the relationships that were built, and again, fortunate to do the adult thing and make a living doing it. Right. So that's, but again, it got, it's a good friend of mine says it best. He compares it to a marriage. They're all things are going to have their challenges. It's just what you can tolerate. So it's
Are you going to want to comment on that, Alex?
Yeah. so that's it's been a good ride. I mean, it really has. This is my obviously 41st year involved in racing, and if you don't have that desire, it certainly wouldn't have lasted that long. In anything.
Well, in 2013, pal, your life altered for the best once we met. That's for sure.
Well, I was going to leave it kind and generous.
Well, in all seriousness here, Chris, you've had quite the ride, and some might even say that you crossed over to the dark side when you started working in the K&N series, which now ultimately has become the Arca Menards Series. That must have been a huge change for you.
Yeah. I mean, the running joke was it was always my job to beat the system, and now it's my job to make sure the system's not getting beat. So it's there are certain aspects of racing that I truly didn't have a clue about when I came to work for NASCAR. And I felt like I had a pretty good understanding about it, and I'm sure Alex would tell you the same.
Yes.
But it's more of a tight knit, like broad tight knit, where with the team side of things, you would live or die for the guy or the lady beside you. Well, now it's kind of that way across this. It's just a strange dynamic because it's. I mean, obviously Jeff was on the phone a moment ago, and honestly, if he got out of line at the racetrack, he's no different than the next person. Right. At the end of the day, we'll go grab dinner. But when the activities are going on, you have to call a ball and a strike the way it is. And so it's just an odd dynamic, and it's good, but it's just different. And honestly, this whole pandemic thing for everyone, I mean, it took everyone's undivided attention to detail to keep this thing going. And yes, I'm fortunate to work with good people, but everybody had to buy into it, and buy into what you're going to have to do. And so far, so good. So
yeah, absolutely, you're right. Well, we're getting ready to wrap up here, and I know that you're a huge Gamecocks fan. You love college football. My buddy Mark here is a anything Buffalo fan, so he's
not called Buffalo. Come on, Florida Gators.
Okay, college.
Yeah,
Buffalo doesn't have a college.
We're talking about.
Anyways, Buffalo Bills fan, and I give him credit. The Bills are a pretty nice team right now. Have you watched much of the Bills?
Actually, a good friend of mine played for the Bills. A gentleman by the name of Jeff Burris. Jeff played for them. Actually, whenever Jim Kelly was there, that would have had to have been somewhere around 96-7 kind of range when they went to the Super Bowl. And oddly enough, Jeff.
Chris, did they ever win the Super Bowl?
When they went to the Super Bowl, I said, just quit. Just stop. You're ahead. You've won. But no, Jeff and I actually. So I do keep up with the Bills. I don't want
to slight your buddy Burris there, Chris, but I don't know if you recall, but the area code in Buffalo in that area is 716. And after that run of Super Bowl failures, this year they're waiting to see what happened if they made it to the Super Bowl again, which they didn't. But they're apparently going to change the area code to 044.
044.
Or 045, wasn't it?
No, they never went to the Super Bowl for the fifth time. But they did lose.
Next year.
They definitely are 044.
It's a good distraction, especially nowadays with the pandemic and so on. I'm also in the entertainment industry, so I feel the pain as well. We can't wait for things to get back on track here in Canada. We're not quite to the same spot you guys are with vaccines. As a matter of fact, we just borrowed 1.5 million vaccines from the U.S. government. We're a little bit behind, but hopefully we can win this race against COVID. That's what's most important right now. We're trying to get through it the best we can here, and that's why Alex and I started this podcast as a good diversion, distraction, and for me personally, I've been able to meet so many great people like yourself in the racing business, and it's really given me a kickstart to learning a lot about the sport, and so far I'm really enjoying it.
Again, racing has been very kind to me and my family. As I never will forget the first, we actually won Dover in '98, and I wasn't at the racetrack. And later that year, we won Talladega, and I was at the track, and it was a No Bull 5 race, and I truly cried like a 2-year-old walking to victory lane, because it is one of those. Again, you can't ever top winning with your family, and there is no better. But at the same token, when I grew up and when Alex grew up, racing really wasn't accepted in mainstream, and it just, all the emotions of people telling you weren't going to get anywhere with it kind of took hold. And the fact that we just won $1 million for No Bull race, that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
but no, it's and enjoy, Mark, because there's some really good people, and which there's good people in any avenue of life, but it's it has its challenges. There's some days you just want to get out of the car and run in any direction other than the direction you're going. but it's been a good ride.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome, Chris. Well, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Look forward to the chance for us to catch up. Missed Florida this year, of course, but hopefully we don't have to wait till next winter to see each other again. But really looking forward to it. Say hi to the girls for us, and once again, thanks for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me, and if there's anything that I can help down the road, please don't hesitate.
That's great. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Pleasure to meet you, Mark.
Yeah, you too, Chris. Bye for
See
now.
you, Alex. Take care, man.
Yeah, it's what a nice guy.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah, really is. I don't know if he realizes how much we have in common, Chris and myself.
Yeah, you should. I thought you were going to tell him.
Well, you know what? The interview was about him, not me. But both went to university for marketing. Although he's at marketing, administration, and management. He's got 3 degrees. Other than that, in the successful NASCAR career, I think our lives are pretty parallel.
Yeah, you both have a daughter.
Yeah.
Married in the same, or born in the same year.
Yeah, he's got Allie. I have Callie, both born in 2004. I didn't ask him what month she was born in, but anyway, well, there you have it, Alex. How about you tell our listeners how they can support us?
Absolutely. The best way is Facebook. Head over there, search for our Wingnut Sports page. Also, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please take a second to like the podcast. We would really appreciate it, and that would help everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook.com/Driver and Deep, and this has been the Driver and Deep podcast with your hosts, Mark and Alex.
All right, you're clear. Got a slow boat coming up on your inside. All right, you're clear. You're clear on this. It's going to be on the inside of you. All right, you're clear.